What is good, people? And I wanted to come on real quick today and talk a little bit about some players that are still on the free agent market that I believe that the Redskins could perhaps bring in and maybe they could make a difference on the team. Now, a few of these guys are a couple years past their prime, and I'm going to actually talk about a few that I don't think would be a good fit with the team as well as I go. Obviously, the first report that I saw this past weekend stated that Brandon Copeland, he's 27 from Baltimore. He's actually originally from Baltimore. It's his third year in the league. You know, he could be a special teams addition. I think he had somewhere around 5 sacks last year. It might have been 4. Don't quote me there. But the Redskins are looking to add a couple of guys, and this particular individual would be a good special teams player and could add to the depth on the team that actually has taken a pretty big hit this year with Pernell McPhee not coming back. Now, the next guy I want to talk about is Jonathan Cooper. And Cooper has actually been with, I believe, 4 teams in 5 years maybe. After originally being a pretty good prospect, it's almost like he couldn't find the right system for him. And when he did find the right systems, he ended up getting injured. Such as what happened last year. He came into the Redskins. The team had some needs. We signed him off the street. He did well, actually. But after 4 games, he ended up getting injured again, missed the entire season. Now, I will say he looked like he really did fit the system well when he was playing. So, in my mind, I thought perhaps he'd be a good pickup this year in free agency as far as bringing back to the team. And as far as I know, he hasn't been signed anywhere else right at this point. And the Redskins should bring this guy back, albeit on just a 1-year type of deal, He brings depth. Also, I think he could push somebody to start at that position. He was actually doing well before he got injured. I know that a lot of people want us to move towards a different roster that doesn't have any types of injury, history. But that's almost impossible to do in the NFL, especially with most players already under contract. To me, Cooper was a good fit for what we had going on with Callahan, and it seemed like he was doing well with his other teammates. After Laval went down, he stepped in and did well. Now, a guy that we reportedly brought in Sunday that I don't particularly like is Ereck Flowers. Flowers is 24 years old. There's still a chance that he could break free from the mold that has been kind of set for him during his time in New York and then Jacksonville. I mean, he's labeled a first-round bust, clearly. I believe that he never should have been a top 15 pick anyway and had that much pressure put on him. But Jerry Reese in New York was set to take Brandon Sheriff with their pick in that first round. And, of course, when the Redskins took him ahead of them, it kind of threw things all amok. And they got desperate and immediately grabbed the next best thing off the board. And that was a mistake. They probably should have just grabbed the next best position on their board instead of next player at the position they were already looking at. It was a drastic miss. And, 55 starts in his career thus far. He's kind of young to have that many starts. But, the overall opinion on this guy is pretty much even everywhere you go. He's no good. But maybe a depth player put in the right position, maybe Flowers could shine a little bit. Who knows? It would have to be, basically a bargain basement contract for me to even think about it, though. Another guy was Shane Ray. He was a disappointment, actually a pretty big disappointment in Denver. He only had 15 starts across 4 years and got like 14 sacks and 15 starts, which is not good. And, the overall thought pattern about this guy was that he was going to be, the next great thing down there on that defense, and it just never panned out. Perhaps maybe if we could get him on a cheap contract, decent edge rusher, perhaps maybe a backup at this point, but he's 25 years old. I believe we could plug him in. Now, the next guy has actually played for our team before, and he left, ended up in Indianapolis, And I believe he had like 35 catches for 330 some yards last year and a touchdown. 10 starts. He's only 28, but Ryan Grant, who was one of Jay Gruden's favorites, is actually not a bad decision or a bad choice to bring in, maybe just to kick the tires and talk to him and see where his head is at as far as does he hold a grudge towards the franchise about letting him go last year. Now, I've also heard a rumor, report, whatever you want to call it, come out that Gruden has absolutely no input on any of these free agents. So take that whatever way you will, but you got to think that Grant was one of the coaching staff's favorites. Perhaps maybe they could bring him back again if they could get him back cheap. The next guy that I was looking at over the weekend, I believe could flourish in our system, but did not have a good year last year. Josh Klein, who is a guard with the Tennessee Titans. And, I believe he's only missed like 2 games over the last 3 years. He didn't have a very good season last year. Pulling something from PFF, which I normally don't do, but he allowed 38 pressures last year, making him the 53rd highest rated guard in the NFL, which is just about last. So caution to the wind on that one. I mean, he was set to make a pretty decent chunk of change. Titans let him go. He's still on the free agent market. This guy could be viewed as a decent depth pickup. If you look at guys that are kicking around on the free agent market at this point in time, they're all going to have some problems when it comes to these guards. Most teams lock these guys up long term when they know they have a good thing. The Redskins, of course, can't keep one healthy, but it's another option. And it's kind of better than the other couple options that are floating around that, where guys are contemplating retirement, like TJ Lang from Detroit, Josh Sitton from Chicago. They're 31 and 32, respectively, but they both, were getting ready to take a huge hit and were released. The teams were going to take a huge hit because of their contracts, and they were both released, and now they're trying to figure out if maybe they should play football again or not. The Redskins should take long looks at players like that, but at the same time, I believe they should look for 1 to 2 veterans, maybe 3, and then the rest of the guys that they bring in should come from the draft. And I'm thinking those 2 third-round picks, at least one of them is going to be a guard, maybe both of them. But looking further on down the line, at more guys that we could possibly be in on, I feel like a couple of guys are there that may cost a little bit too much money for us to touch, but could be good fits, and their market could be evaporating. One is Justin Houston. He's 30 years old. He had 9 sacks and only 12 starts last year. He is starting to show a little bit of tread wear. He is highly expensive, and I don't know, honestly, what kind of contract he would expect to get or how the Redskins would work a deal with him as far as being able to afford it. But when it comes down to it, Justin Houston could be that edge rusher that we're looking for, maybe for a year, till we can bring another guy in through the draft and maybe get him right. And who knows? With Pernell McPhee leaving, that's big shoes to fill. It's a big hole there now as far as the depth goes. I know a lot of people will probably sit back and wonder what I'm talking about. McPhee didn't bring a whole lot to the board last year. I do believe he was in 13 or 14, maybe 15 games. He might have been in 15 games. I'm not certain, but it's probably more like 13 or 14. And last year was the first year that he did not get a sack. But he did put a lot of pressure on the quarterback last season. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And he did well kind of doing his part. Let's put it that way. I actually enjoy watching McPhee play, even though he's getting a little long in the tooth now. I'm not certain the team's going to bring him back. I feel like feels like maybe he could do more elsewhere. So they have to look further than him. I'm not certain why they haven't offered Junior Galette a contract yet. I know last year Galette was offered a deal with the Redskins, and he turned it down. And I believe the word used was something like plantation means or something to that nature. And the deal was pulled off the table. I know he went and visited the Raiders. I believe they offered. But I would think he was trying to use the Raiders against the Redskins to try to get a better deal, and it didn't work out. And he's been kicking himself in the tail for a straight year now over on Twitter. Anybody that follows him on Twitter knows what I'm saying is true. He's now tweeting saying that he thinks we're going to win multiple, double-digit games in, the coming season. I think the guy deserves a chance to just kick the tires and see what he's got. We set him for 2 years on IR with issues on his knees, and this guy wants to help us, in a bad kind of way. He knows that this is his only chance to ever play again as far as playing with the Redskins. He didn't play at all last year, but he did have 3 sacks in 2017, and you just can't teach that twitch move that he has, that first move off the line. He kills tackles with that move. I can go back and pull up game film and show it to everybody, but I'm not going to do it here right now. I also feel like the team could probably benefit from stopping and taking a look at Jordy Nelson. Now, I realize a lot of people think that Jordy Nelson's done. The Raiders moved on from him. They're trying to go younger. He is 33 years old, but he did have 63 catches and like 739 yards last year in only 14 games. And he's still catching the ball at about a 70% click, which is really good, actually. I just believe that the Raiders have a lot of problems, including line issues and questions at quarterback and their situation with their system last year. I mean, a lot of changeover happened with the Raiders. So I'm not certain that Nelson's done yet, but he's definitely getting close. A 1-year deal at dirt cheap, and this guy's probably better than all of our receivers on our team, would be the way that I looked at it. Now, I say that with reserve, though, because I'm still holding out hope that Josh Doctson could turn into something. I know a lot of Redskin fans are not big on him, and I get it. Moving on, 2 other receivers that I actually have put eyes to that I think the Redskins have probably at least kicked the tires on or look at. One is Michael Crabtree, and I know that this guy has a bad rep with a lot of fans now. He's an underachiever, has been for a while, and he caught like 54 passes for 600 yards last year and 3 touchdowns. He still started all the football games, and he's still a body to put on the line. And at this point, if we could get him for cheap, it might actually be a decent pickup. I'm not overly thrilled about the idea of having Michael Crabtree anywhere on my team, but I realize that the team needs outside receivers bad. There's no way that we can go into a season with no outside receivers. I mean, and I'm not certain what they got on the roster right now as far as outside receivers go, but it's not many. I know Doxson's on there. I know, what's his name? Robert Davis is on there. I know Cam Sims is on there. So we definitely need at least 4 outside receivers, maybe 5 for the season. The other guy I wanted to take a look at was Pierre Garçon. And I know that a lot of people are down on Pierre for the way that he left Washington and went and got paid. But I don't really get down on the guy. I mean, we couldn't pay him. He needed to go make his money elsewhere. Since leaving Washington, though, mind you, 2 years, he's only started 16 games. He's had 64 catches for 786 yards and 1 touchdown. And, he averaged 1,000 yards and, 80-plus catches with us and was the mainstay in our offense. The last 2 years have been injury plagued for him, so who knows the way that goes. I believe that he'd be great to bring in and teach some young guys, He's still the immaculate route runner that he's always been. And I believe he can still catch the way he always has. He's just had an issue staying healthy. And I can understand that if our staff doesn't want to bring him back because of that. I just saw him on the free agent list, and I thought to myself, he would actually be a good guy to bring in to teach somebody for a cheap rate, mind you. And last but not least, I got to throw this guy's name out there just because We are desperate at free safety. And it says it all that this man's only started and played in 3 games in 2 years. So I'm just throwing it out there as the Redskins probably should not go after this guy, but his name rings bells, and that's Eric Berry. You know, he's 30 years old. The guy has come back from a life-threatening disease, but it does appear like it might be over. I don't know. Maybe you could kick the tires on this guy on a league minimum and wish for the best. I don't know. Honestly, I just threw his name in there because we're desperate at free safety, and we could probably get him for ultra cheap. I mean, we brought in DRC, and we gave him a shot. You know, I wouldn't say that Eric Berry would be out of the question for, you know, a bargain basement 1 year type deal. And then if he only plays a game or two, make none of it guaranteed, you know, cut him, cost nothing. But that's about all I got, man. You know, these guys that I'm talking about here, you know, none of these guys are world beaters. You know, outside of maybe Jonathan Cooper, I don't really see anybody that might threaten Jonathan Cooper or Josh Klein. I don't really see anybody that we could pick up right now that would really threaten for a starting position. But in my opinion, left guard should be the #1 need that we have at this point, because we have an opening there. But that's about all I got. You know, if you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you're not already, subscribe to the channel. Make sure to hit that red button. None of those things cost any money. But that's about all I got, man. Hell to the Redskins. Peace.